Okay guys, check this out. I was able to make a form where I could choose a file from my computer. I could give it a name, a friendly name, and then hit add, and it would add it into my table in Microsoft Access. I could grab a different file, change it to a different name, and hit add on that, and it will add it to my table as well. And then I can go to my table if I want where my files were added, and I can go ahead and double click on one of those attachments and I can see the file and open it. I can go to the next row that opened and had a file on it, and I can see that one too, and that's what we're doing today. I'm your host, Sean McKenzie. Thank you for joining once again on my channel on data engineering. In this episode, we go back to our Microsoft Access playlist. We're going to take a look at how to load files into our records in Microsoft Access. Now this is super handy if you have little files that need to be attached to a record, whether you have a school database and you need to attach some, parental forms onto it, or if you have some other kind of database and you're attaching music or some kind of little attachments on there, then this works great. Now, storing attachments, of course, into Microsoft Access doesn't really work if you have a ton of big attachments or if you're very heavily using attachments all the time, but it can be very, very handy in some circumstances, and to do it programmatically is a little bit challenging, and that's what we're going to cover today. Let's get to it. Want to buy me a coffee? Just click that super thanks button down below and put your credit card in. Okay guys, super fun one today. We're going to put some files into our table. This is the little file that I've created in my C drive there, and I will make that available on my site, my download site. Here is a directory I've got in my C drive, and I've got some pictures in here, different colors, just so that you can see that they are actually different. I created one that's orange and blue and purple and different colors and things like that. And so we're going to use those and we're going to put those into our database table today. And so there is our file, and here is our database. If I open it up, we don't really have anything in here yet, so we are going to first create a table. And we'll create a table that can have some text fields in addition to an attachment field. So we'll be loading an attachment field, and we'll give that first field an auto number. That'll be our ID, and then I'll just make an attachment name, attachment path. We'll do a file, which will be the attachment itself, and we'll make that the attachment data type. And you can see it there in the list of available data types. We have our attachment type. And so that's enough for a table. I'll hit save on that, and we'll give it a name. We'll call it our table attachment file, and we'll hit OK. And that's probably going to give us a primary key, because I forgot my primary key there. That means that auto number there, I could have just clicked up there and said primary key, but it's saying, hey, you really should do that. You forgot. So I say yes to that message, and away we go. So now we have a table, and we have an empty table with attachment files in it. You can see there is the attachment name. So we could put something in there just manually, just using the Access interface if we wanted to. We could just call it my file, and we could punch in the path to that file. I'll just put some dots in there because we're not actually getting a file from a path here because we're using the Access interface. And we can double click on the little paperclip icon there, and you can see that it has attachments available for that particular field. And I can click add to add an attachment into my field there, and I could grab a little picture or a text document or whatever I want. In this case, I have different colored pictures, and I'll grab that JPEG there, and the JPEG will be added when I hit OK. And you can see that it's been added into the row, into the field in this row. And if I want to see that attachment, I can double click on the paperclip, and then I can select my file and hit open, and it will actually open it directly from the database there, which is really awesome. And so we have a little file that's stored in there, and that's exactly what we want. But the question would be, what most people have is, how can I do that programmatically? How can I add a file into my attachment field in my table And that's what we're going to show here today. So we'll go to forms and open a new form design. We're just going to create a very simple form here today. I'll grab a text box out of my controls there. That will be called text 0, not for long though. And you can see it is an unbound field, and I'll just copy that and paste it back onto my canvas here. And there we've got two fields now. We'll add a button as well. We can cancel that wizard if it pops up. We are just going to be doing everything sort of custom here manually. And so let's go ahead and change our form a little bit here. So we'll put the name into our tag there. That's going to be the name of our file. And we'll call this one our path. And so it's going to be the path to the file that we want to put into our database. And then we'll just give our button a caption here. We'll put add on there. And so that gives us three controls to work with there. And you can see we've got our text box here, but if I go to the properties, it's called text 0, which doesn't really mean anything to anybody. So we'll call that txt name, and then we'll name our path text box as well. We'll call that txt path, and we'll name our button. We'll just call it cmd add, and that's gonna give us a button to work with so that we can add a file from our, file directory into our database, which is what a lot of people want to do. There's our two text boxes and our button, and we are good to go. So the next thing we want to do is use this text box here. We want to be able to double click it and then be able to choose a file from our computer and put it in our database. So let's find that double click event there. We're going to click on the ellipsis, and that'll open up our choose builder. We'll choose the code builder and click OK, and we are good to go here. So that's going to give us our Visual Basic for Applications window, and you'll see that it has a sub already created for us called txt path double click, and that is going to be where we can put our code to open up the file dialog so that we can choose a file from our computer. And so in order to do that, we're going to choose our MSO file dialog file picker, and you'll get a little message here if you don't have it referenced already. This is going to put the reference to the file dialog into your project, and you want to say yes to that if you get that message, and you can go ahead and finish off here with the closing bracket. And so we're going to use with, and so if we're using with, of course we'll use end with, and then we can go ahead and grab our file. And in order to show the file dialog picker, we'll use .show, and then we can say, once we've done the .show, we can say me txt path is equal to whatever we picked in the file dialog. And so we'll do selected items 1. We're just going to allow the first item to be captured there in the file dialog, and that is going to put the path of whatever we choose into the txt path field or control on our form. And so let's go ahead and do a debug compile. That'll show you if there's anything really broken in there, and then we'll save it and we'll add a name to our form, and we will be good to go. So we'll call it form add attachment, and you should see it pop into your window on the left there, into the navigation bar. Click that form view and you'll get the form popped up, and double click into the field we just created, and that will give you the file dialog where you can pick a file off of your computer. Now mine opened here at the same directory as my access file, so I can grab a file, and you can see that it has populated this field here in the access attachment folder, and it's given me the smde blue g.png, and now I can click on that button, and it doesn't do anything yet because we haven't coded that. So let's go back, open our form and design view. We'll click on that button and go to the properties, and we'll click the ellipsis on the on-click event, go to the code builder, and we'll open up our VBA editor once again. Here's the little procedure that we just created for the double click on the path text box, and now we're going to add some VBA for our add command button. Okay, and so the code that we're going to use today will look very, very similar to lots of code that you've seen on this channel, but it's a little bit different in the sense that we are going to see a record set kind of inside of a record set due to the way that the attachment field works. So in order to complete this task, we are going to need some variables. We'll create a name variable as a string. We'll do a path variable for the path, and we are going to use a DB reference to the database there, and we'll do a record set variable and a record set for files variable, which will also be a DAO.recordSet, and we'll set that database to our current database. That just makes it nice and easy, kind of as a reference variable there, and we are good to go. Okay, we're going to do most of our coding in between these two statements here. We're setting our database and setting it to nothing, and we'll load up those variables, the name variable and the path variable. And so we'll set our name variable equal to NZ or NZ, depending on where you come from, and the name of our control, me txt name, which is an expression. And you'll notice that we put the double quotes there, which means if that happens to be null, then it's going to convert it into an empty string, which will work for our string variable. And we'll do the same for our path variable. So we'll load that str path with the me txt path, and if that happens to be empty, we'll make it an empty string. And then we can check the length of those. We can say if the length is 0 of either of those, then exit out of our sub, don't do anything, because maybe the user just cleared the text file. You don't want to try to do any kind of processing if the user did that. From there, we can go ahead and set our record set variable equal to db.openRecordSet. And since we are using an access table for sure in this case, because of the nature of the attachment data type, that is a native access data type, and so we don't need to add our db open dynaset or db open snapshot or anything like that. We can just say open record set tbl att files, and we are going to set that equal to nothing at the end of our procedure so that everything gets cleaned up nicely in terms of our variables, and then we can go ahead and program inside of there. So we're going to use with RST, and if you're not familiar with, you can check out my video on that, but we're going to use that in order to simplify what we're programming here. So we'll say with RST, we're going to add a new record, and then we're going to update at the end of that sort of sequence there. So everything in between those statements will be about loading the record. And so you guys might have seen my other video on how to open a record set and loop through all of the records in order to do something. This is kind of similar, except we're just opening a record set this time, and we're adding to the end or appending a record onto it. And so we can go ahead and say exclamation attachment name is equal to our name variable, and our path is equal to the path variable. But before we get to that update, we are going to do some more stuff here, and that is going to be to create another record set, which will be our RST files record set, and that is going to be set to equal to the fields, in this case the fields of our open record set that we already have. We're going to say dot fields, and then it'll be att file, which is the name of our field in the database. And so we're setting RST files equal to dot fields att file dot value, and that's actually a record set. So the value of that field is actually a record set on its own, and so we can set our RST files equal to that, and then once we've done that, then we can do things with that internal record set that's in that field there, and we can do another add new and update. And that probably looks very familiar to you because we just did it. We are actually doing it with the record set, the RST record set, and now we're doing another sort of add new and update on the record set that's in that field there. And so we're going to do rstfiles.fields, and we're going to use the file data field that's in there, and that's where we're going to add our file, and we'll use the .loadFromFile command, and that is going to allow us to load a file into the attachments on our record there. And so there's the path field. We're adding that as the argument, so we're giving that command to load that file with that path into the field called att file, but that field is actually a record set on its own, and we're calling that RST files, and so that's where we're doing all of the magic there. We're using that load from file. That's going to put it right in there. There's our rstfiles.update. So we're going to update that RST files, and we will actually close it before we get to the update for the RST record set. That's what the .update is there. So let's go ahead and close that RST record set. We'll do a .close at the very end of our with block there, and we're setting that equal to nothing after our with block, but we're closing it inside of the with block. And then we are also going to close the RST files record set. That is open inside of the add new and update of the RST record set, and so we'll do an rst files.close as well, just to button everything up so that it's all closed and ready to go. And then I guess at the end we can put a little message on our procedure saying, hey, you know what, we're done, and we'll put a message box saying that our file was uploaded. And of course you can also put error handling on this. Make sure to check out my video on error handling in VBA, so you could put a error handling sort of structure around this in order to catch little errors that come up. You might get some file not found or something like that, but we're just doing it simply today. We'll put a message box at the end of our procedure saying, hey, you know, that file was loaded and we gave it this name and we are good to go. We'll put a information style box there with a caption of file added, and I think that's really all we need. Let's try a debug compile. Let's see if we broke anything. Nothing major there. Let's save it, and hopefully this will actually work on the first try. We'll find out here. And so let's go to our database here, and we can open our form in form view. And now we've already got what we put in there before. Let's choose a different one. Let's grab a different color here. Let's grab that yellow one. We'll grab that and say OK. And you can see that that path is now in our path control there, and we can add our own sort of friendly name to it. We'll call it my yellow theme, something like that, and then we can add that. Oh, it looked like it worked, so that's great. So the file my yellow theme was loaded. That is exactly what we want to see there, and we could choose another one if we want. We can double click that field once again and bring our file dialog there and choose the orange one, and now you can see that it now says orange in that one, and we could change our name to say orange instead of yellow, and we could click that add button, and you can see it says the file my orange theme was loaded. You can go OK, and we can go check it out now. Let's double click on that table, and you can see this this field here is quite long now. This attachment path is quite long. Let's expand that out a little bit. There we go. So you can see that it grabbed the PNG files, the two that we chose. There's the first one we did manually, and then the two that we did automatically just now. Let's double click on that. The first one was the yellow one. We can click open, and that will open it directly from our database there. And we can go to the second one here, and we can double click that one, and you can see that it is the orange file. That's what we want to see as well. We can click open, and that is what we want to see for sure. So we can go OK. Now the path that's in there is not actually used after it's been loaded. You don't have to keep the value of the path that was loaded because the file is actually loaded in the database now. Let's choose another color like blue. We could change the name of that one to my blue theme, And you can see that the path has been updated, of course, to what we chose in the file dialog picker there. And we can click add, and you can see the file My Blue Theme was loaded. Click OK. And if we go back to our table, you can see that there's another row in there, and I can double click on the paperclip in order to get that file, and that's exactly what we want to see. There are many more operations that you can do with files using VBA, so if you guys are interested in those, make sure to let me know in the comments. Looking for additional resources for your project? Make sure to check out the additional links in the description.